Welcome to Joyful Living DMV. We invest in real estate. Don't forget to subscribe to Joyful Living DMV YouTube channel and visit us online at JoyfulLivingDMV.com.
So, because you're investor friendly and you understand the crazy world that we're coming from, and we're trying to make numbers work however we can, that means we can bring to you some of our oddly structured deals or some funky transactions that don't go to just your everyday title company. What does that look like from your standpoint?
Absolutely. So I don't claim to be an expert in everything title related, but definitely seen a few things in the 20 years or so that I've been in the business. Recently, it's come back. Some people want to do subject to closings. So that means that the property that you're buying is subject to the deed or some other lien that your seller might have on the property. A lot of title companies don't want to touch it. It just takes a little bit of extra care and attention. My underwriters are on board with us doing those, and they look at them as well. I've had to say no sometimes. Something doesn't look right. We're not going to take that kind of additional risk or bring our clients into something like that. But if everything looks good, there's no reason why we can't do it. Everybody just has to be on board and understand the risks and responsibilities of what they are doing. We also do closings out of tax sale foreclosures. A lot of title companies will not insure those. They don't want to touch them. Same thing, our underwriters are on board with us doing them. We review them, they review them with us. And if everything looks good, then we can go ahead and do them. I had a client buying 4 of them a few months ago, 4 tax sale foreclosures. We ended up closing 2 of them. One we couldn't close, and the other one the buyer backed out from. So,
Great.
you know, just like any other transaction, those are just a little riskier, and there's some other, they take some additional review.
A little bit more due diligence.
Correct. So sometimes I have to pass on certain, and usually on the more cookie cutter transactions that we're used to seeing, the problems can be fixed. Sometimes on those, just fixing the problem is not worth it.
Gotcha. Now, since there's more work on your end, does that mean that the title fee is a little bit higher?
On those funkier ones, usually, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll charge my attorney fee on an hourly basis or something like that, or give them a flat fee that I think is going to compensate us sufficiently for the amount of work that we have to do. So yeah, those are a little bit higher.
Understood. And reasonably so, right?
Yeah, those deals usually, I'm hoping that my client is getting a better deal, or I don't know if a better deal, but a good deal from the, obviously they're buying those tax sale foreclosures to get a good deal, so they can afford to pay a little more on the title side.
Sure, okay. So let's move on now and talk about the actual steps to closing. From the point that someone calls you and says, hey Mark, I have a deal, to sitting down to the table, maybe remotely, maybe all together, and signing all the papers at the end.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we'll just start beginning to end. I mean, usually starts with a client that's already worked with me. Usually start with an email. Here's the contract. Usually they have a lender in mind as well. We're going to be working with this lender, and we take it from there. We're going to enter all the information into our system, get everything ordered, get the title work ordered, get the survey ordered, lien certificates when necessary, judgments, everything that needs to be done, and simultaneously send out letters to all the parties involved, letters or emails, some sort of communication to the parties that we're handling the transaction and requesting information that we're going to need for closing. So sellers, if there's a homeowners association, we want to know about that. The sellers have mortgages, we need to know about that to get the payoffs. If they have any judgments or liens against them, we need to know about that. So that's information that we're getting from the seller. If there are real estate agents involved, we need to get their commission statements. the lender, we need to get the loan information, and they're also expecting us to send them our title commitment. So we work on that. That doesn't happen until we get our title work back, which is usually a few days. If it's really complicated, maybe a couple weeks. Then as we start gathering information from everybody, we start inputting and collecting everything into the system to be able to produce at the end the settlement statement, which is really the summary, the financial summary of the whole transaction. I'm assuming most of your viewers are familiar with the settlement statement.
Yes.
Sometimes called the HUD-1 on residential transactions, now called the CD, closing disclosure or Baltic settlement statement.
And it depends on who you talk to as to how they refer to it. Most people in our world are still calling it the HUD-1.
Correct.
Some people are calling it the ALTA, and then other people, I don't even know some of the things they call it, but, right, so I'm now trying
It's the settlement statement.
to use all the letters in the alphabet soup.
Exactly. So once we have all the information, we send it out to the parties. Everybody has a chance to review the figures. That doesn't mean that there
They
aren't
do.
that they do, or that there aren't last-minute changes. That happens often. But hopefully everybody gets a chance to review the figures as well as the documents. And we get to closing day, where everybody's going to sign the settlement statement, the loan documentation, our title documents, and get the keys to their house. Like we were saying earlier, getting to the closing table doesn't mean that everybody's sitting around the table
Right.
anymore.
Right.
A lot of parties might be signing remotely, but it's a day where keys are exchanged, the property transfers hands, and we take care of dispersing all of the funds from the closing.
So, Mark, a couple of questions that I have. When you're sending in or bringing in monies for closing, so we generally just wire transfer to you. That seems to be the easiest. Do you take cashier's checks or any types of monies here at the office, or do you now require that all monies just get wired?
We require that all monies get wired. We understand that practically that gets difficult sometimes because of last-minute changes that we were talking about before. So, if it's a $100,000 transaction and we have a $100 change at settlement, yes, we'll take cash or a check for the difference, but the majority of the funds do need to be wired to us.
Okay.
And that practically, the seller in the transaction usually wants their funds wired as well. If you give me a check, the check's not going to clear until tomorrow.
Right.
Let's say it's a bank check and everything's fine with it. The check's not going to clear until tomorrow. How am I going to wire funds to a seller today if I don't have the funds for them?
Absolutely.
So, we have to have good funds in our accounts in order to be able to disperse those to all the parties involved.
So that brings me to another set of questions. So if I have closing today, how far ahead should I plan to get those monies out to you?
As the buyer, if you're going to be
Yes,
sending
if I'm buying.
I technically don't need the money until the day of closing. If you're going to be closing at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's probably a good idea that you send the funds the day before so that they show up in my account. Because if you send them at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm not going to get them probably until later in the day. Some banks, some kinds of accounts take longer to process the wires out, so you should ask your respective
So I
banking
need to
institution.
pre-plan.
Correct. If you're taking out of like if you're going to be cashing out stocks to be sending the money,
well ahead.
you got to start that well ahead. And even some brokerage accounts, if it's already in cash, to go from the brokerage account to be wired out, that might take a few days. Or they might only wire it out to an account in your name, and then you have to send it out to me. So those are all steps that you need to be aware of about your own institutions. That has nothing to do with us. But as long as I have the money at the time that we start the closing, it doesn't matter to me when it was sent.
So likewise, if I'm on the selling end, about how long does it take me to get my money?
Once I approve it, the wire process is almost instantaneous. It goes through the banking system. Shouldn't take more than an hour to hit your account.
Okay.
Practically, we'll finish a closing. I might have, especially if we're doing something remotely, I'm not in the office, it might take a couple hours for me to get back. If I don't approve it till 4 o'clock or something like that, you might not get your account till the next day. There is no reason why a wire should not be in your account, let's say, the next morning.
24 hours max.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But usually within hours from closing, you'll have your wire.
Okay, awesome. And when I come to closing, really all I need to have with me is my driver's license or some form of ID so you know it's really me.
As the seller, that is correct, unless I've required something else, like, we needed some form of documentation. Some sellers need to bring in some originals, for example, if we required a death certificate to be brought to closing, or sometimes letters of administration for an estate or things like that. Those sometimes you have to bring, but for the most part, just your driver's license. As the seller, just your driver's license and the keys. Don't forget the keys.
Oh, right.
Your buyer's
Don't
gonna
forget
want
the keys. Right. Okay. So anything else about closing?
If you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer. I think that's covered.
I think that's
that's
good.
covered a lot.
Thank you for watching. We ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joyful Living DMV, to automatically see our latest videos.